The desert night stretched out before Abram, a vast canvas of darkness sprinkled with the glittering dust of a million stars. The air, still warm from the day's sun, carried the scent of dry earth and distant fires. It was a scene of stark beauty, a place where silence whispered and the stars seemed close enough to touch.
Yes, this night feels different.
Abram, a man of nomadic life, was no stranger to such nights. Yet on this night, something felt different. A sense of anticipation, a sacred silence seemed to hang in the air, as if the very stars were holding their breath. For this was no ordinary night. This was a night for divine revelation, a night when God himself would meet with Abram under the vast expanse of the heavens.
I have traveled a long way. I left my homeland, my father's house.
Abram, his heart heavy with unspoken longings and questions, looked up at the spectacle above him. He had journeyed a long way, leaving behind his homeland and his father's house, following a call from God that resonated in the depths of his being. He had traveled with unwavering faith, yet the promised land remained unseen, the desire of his heart unfulfilled.
Will I ever see the fruit of my obedience? Will I ever hold the promised heir in my arms?
The weight of unanswered prayers and unfulfilled promises pressed down on him. Would he ever see the fruit of his obedience? Would he ever hold the promised heir in his arms? As the stars blazed above, a silent invitation seemed to emanate from the heavens. Abram, drawn by an unseen force, found himself on his knees, his gaze fixed on the infinite expanse above.
In the stillness of the desert night, I can hear it.
In the stillness of the desert night, God spoke. Not with a booming voice that shook the earth, but with a whisper that touched the very core of Abram's heart. A whisper that promised a future more magnificent than he could ever imagine.
Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, so shall your offspring be.
The voice of God, filled with quiet authority, broke the silence of the desert night. God was not just offering Abram a large family. He was promising him a legacy as boundless as the cosmos itself. His descendants would be as numerous as the stars that glittered above, a vast and uncountable multitude. It was a promise of breathtaking scope, a glimpse into a future overflowing with life and blessing.
Can this promise really be for me?
Abram, his heart pounding in his chest, struggled to grasp the magnitude of God's words. He had lived long enough to witness the barrenness of a childless marriage, the wrenching emptiness of a home without laughter. Could this promise, as vast and as distant as the stars themselves, really be for him? Doubt, like a weed in fertile ground, began to take root in his heart.
Lord God, how can I be sure?
He had heard the call of God before, had felt the divine hand guiding his steps. He had left everything behind, trusting in a promise that seemed impossible. Yet, as years stretched into decades, the promised heir remained elusive. The weight of his longing, the sting of disappointment, threatened to extinguish the flickering flame of hope within him.
I long to believe, but
He wasn't being defiant. He was simply giving voice to the deep-seated fear that whispered in the silence of his heart. He was old, his wife even more so. The promise seemed too big, too impossible to comprehend. He longed to believe, but doubt cast a long shadow over his heart. God, in his infinite understanding, did not rebuke Abram for his doubt. Instead, he met Abram where he was, gently leading him toward an unwavering faith. He instructed Abram to bring him a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a pigeon. These animals, each representing a different aspect of sacrifice and devotion, were to be part of a solemn covenant ceremony.
I must prepare these animals carefully.
As Abram meticulously followed God's instructions, carefully preparing the animals for the ritual, his gaze continually returned to the stars. They shone down on him, a silent testament to God's faithfulness. Each point of light was a reminder that God's ways were not his ways, that God's thoughts were higher than his thoughts.
These stars, they remind me of his promises.
As he gazed at the stars, Abram felt a sense of peace wash over him. He realized that just as the stars were innumerable, so too were the promises of God. Just as the stars had shone since the beginning of time, so too would God's faithfulness endure. The stars, once a source of doubt, now became symbols of hope, beacons of God's unwavering love and faithfulness. With the animals prepared, Abram waited as God had instructed him. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Darkness descended, and still, he waited. Finally, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, a sleep so profound it bordered on a trance. In this state of heightened awareness, God revealed to Abram the future of his descendants. Before the vision, God enacted his covenant with Abram. A smoking firepot and a blazing torch, symbols of the divine presence, passed between the carcasses of the divided animals. This act, steeped in ancient symbolism, signified God's commitment to his promise. It was a visible, tangible assurance that God would be faithful, even when Abram and his descendants were not.
This covenant, it is a sacred bond.
The sacrifice, with its inherent connotations of surrender and obedience, served as a powerful reminder of the cost of the covenant. It was not a one-sided agreement, but a sacred bond built on mutual trust and commitment. Abram, through his willingness to offer what was precious to him, demonstrated his faith in God's promise and his dedication to the covenant relationship.